Speaker.
Paul Fletcher, Tabuto.
Thank you, sir. May I add my personal commiserations to the family of Celia Lashley. I have fond memories of working with her as a high school teacher at Rotorua Boys High for an extended period of time as she was developing her book, and this is indeed sad news. So I do wish to send on behalf of New Zealand First our condolences to her family, sir. So I stand on behalf of New Zealand First to oppose this bill, and I've been sitting here this evening with building frustration at their supposed solutions to this supposed problem. It seems like a short-sighted and naive attempt to fix a problem we don't actually have. This bill seeks to amend the purpose and the amount of petroleum or energy fuel monitoring levy which is currently provided by under the Energy Fuels Levy and references Act 1989, Section 24. Now, let's be very, very clear. New Zealand First agrees with the obligations to meet our international energy commitments and respects the commitment to improve our oil security. Sir, that is a treaty obligation, but it also is a common sense mandate that this country must seek, and it was spoken to quite eloquently by some of the members about the secure supply of oil. It is essential. However, we currently do meet our obligations through some small stocks held domestically, but more significantly, we currently hold a large amount of tickets, so-called tickets, to meet our obligations. And we've been told that these cost of these ticket obligations are going up. There is a current decrease in the domestic production of oil, but as the Minister himself alluded to, the exploration activity, albeit in some marine reserves at any given time, has increased quite significantly, and the aim is to increase domestic production. What I would question, and I would ask the Minister, is the Select Committee was told that the ticket price is increasing, but what is the situation with the ticket price currently? We know that we also need to increase the volume of stocks. We're using more oil, as alluded to by our Green MP, and our fleet is growing. New Zealand First does not dispute any of these facts here. We know we are highly dependent on these stocks, and to run out of fuel for whatever reason would be devastating for our domestic economy, and to suggest that we should not comply with our international obligations would be inappropriate. But here's where the frustration kicks in on the part of the party. There are so many alternative actions that could be taken rather than just adding another tax onto the New Zealand motorist. We are told that the vote energy budget is now insufficient. You know, why is it insufficient now? Why do we not increase the budget? A simple question. I'll come back to that point later. What has the Minister done actually to establish whether or not the ticket prices so forecast by MB are still increasing? What is the current ticket price? We currently have huge surpluses of oil being manufactured in the US and Canada right now. It's one of the leading determinants of the world retail price at the moment, sir. Also, Mr. Speaker, we're informed that the ministry responsible did investigate and determine the costs of holding physical stocks in New Zealand was prohibitive. But the Minister himself spoke rather eloquently about the need for security. Some of the other national MPs actually spoke really well about the need for secure supply. Sir, I put it to the House tonight that the tickets aren't necessarily going to be that secure supply that we could necessarily rely on in case of some world crisis that would necessitate the need to leverage on our tickets and with regard to our 90-day stocks. It it doesn't hold well in my mind. We spoke about these treaty obligations in the committee in the House stage, and we were assured by some of the members that we had treaty obligations with these partners. But if they're running out of oil themselves, sir, what is their motivation to send oil to New Zealand on the other side of the world? I again question, what was the situation in terms of asking our oil companies to make that capital investment in New Zealand to hold physical stocks? I know it would be expensive, sir, I acknowledge that, but as I noted in an earlier speech to the House on this issue, it is an unusual situation in terms of oil prices, such that I genuinely believe that the oil companies could take on much of that cost themselves without having to burden New Zealand motorists with that additional cost, which is argued would be implemented if we were to ask them to take that on. So the climate in which this legislation was written has changed, and the questions of cost could be reviewed. But does this not give us some time now, I would suggest, that we could address the issue of the vote energy budget? The reason for this question, Mr. Speaker, is that I debate the National Government's supposed motivation for this legislation and the user pays issue. So I question how a crisis that restricts the supply of oil to New Zealand, to our country, is just an issue for New Zealand motorists. One of the National MPs spoke earlier tonight about how this would be a national disaster if we weren't getting our oil, if we didn't hold these stocks. So how is that just the issue of the New Zealand motorist? In fact, the legislation which we're currently seeking to add to speaks to National's historical acknowledgement that this is an issue for all New Zealanders and not just New Zealand motorists, and this burden on supposed user pays is, in New Zealand First's mind, sir, unfair and unnecessary. The solution to add another tax to New Zealand road users, we currently already have one of the highest levy or tax regimes on oil in the developed world, paying 67 cents per litre on petrol. So at the current price, sir, that seems to be, an unsustainable component of the retail price. What I suggested earlier, and I suggest again, take this opportunity to suggest again, is that currently we have this levy, we have all of the other levies which are burdened upon our motorists, and they currently pay GST on it. What was this committee's or the minister's motivation around, well, how about we look at how we could fund this problem, our commitments to our international obligations, through existing taxation. So we have a tax on a tax. Why not look at making good use of that? As noted earlier, the wording by one of the members on this side of the House, sir, speaks about the levy may be used for the purposes outlined in this bill. It also speaks, sir, about the minister's responsibilities to consult. And sir, it speaks about his ability to consult with those people he would choose to consult with. New Zealand First has a strong opposition to that particular part of the legislation. If New Zealanders want to consult on tax, especially petrol tax, they are well within their right under our democratic process to come to this Parliament, sir, and give their voice on a tax that they are obliged to pay. Also, sir, to finish, it is with some reservations that we note that whilst numbers were given to this House on what the levy may be, a formula was suggested, it is also within the purview of the Minister to set the rate himself. And then on top of that, sir, it was acknowledged earlier also that the length of the imposition of the levy is such that we could have paid our commitments off with regard to our international obligations, but continue to impose this levy on the New Zealand motorists. Sir, It makes no sense, it's open-ended, and it is completely unfortunate. So I stand on behalf of New Zealand First tonight to oppose this nonsensical legislation. Thank you.